Hey, Amy Posner here, and I want to talk to you today about two things that are interconnected. One is your ideal versus dream clients. What's the difference and why does it matter? As well as, who makes an ideal prospect? What does it mean when you have to educate the person that you are potentially going to work with? Okay, before we dig into these interesting client topics, I just want to tell you that I ran a mastermind called the Magnetic North Mastermind. It was in its beta version from January to June, and we've gotten such great results for people that about half the people are sticking around, and I am going to run the next iteration, July to December. There's about 4 seats left. And if it's of interest to you to work with me directly on figuring out what's yours to do and then making it happen, which could mean the right clients, it could mean the right income, it can mean the intersection of two. What my goal is to dial that into, how that works in your life and in your life specifically. Not what he's doing, not what she's doing, not what they're doing, but what is yours to do. I've got a great case study put together by the wonderful Dana Owens, a case study writer. And so if that's of interest to you, hit me up at amy@amyposner.com. I'll forward you to the case study, or go to my website and you can book a time to talk to me directly about it and find out what it's about. Okay, let's move on to today's topic. We talk a lot about your dream clients, who would you love to work with? Who would be, a dream client, somebody you dream about that you'd pay to work with or, pay to be connected to. The difference between a dream client and an ideal client is what I want to unpack here a little bit. So often, if you ask someone or if you ask yourself, who's my dream client? So what I hear typically is people mention the businesses that they really admire for one reason or another. And it's usually, you like their product or service and you like their mission. It's aligned with what, how you move in the world and what you believe in and what you want to create. And so you think, oh, that would be a dream client. Wouldn't it be cool to work with, fill in the blank, some brand you've bought from, some brand you've been following. But here's the thing, that might be a dream company to do business with, but they may not be an ideal client. Now, let's talk about what makes an ideal client, and that's why I brought up the topic of educating your customer. So let's say you're a copywriter like I am. Let's say you're, maybe you're a web designer, or any other of the, creative professions, and you want to get more clients, you want to do more business. And so you start thinking about who would I love to work with? And maybe you think, geez, I love the way those people do business. And so you reach out to them, and I've seen people do this. Again, these are companies that you admire, and you reach out to them. Well, it turns out that, they don't really use copy, or they've got a website, but, they're not paying a whole lot of attention to it. Yeah, sometimes you may be able to change their mind about what they need, but more often than not, a client or a prospect that you have to educate about using the service they're going to buy from you is not really an ideal client. So what makes an ideal client versus a dream client? For example, an ideal client is somebody who buys copy regularly. They know how to buy copy. They know the value of copy in their business, and they respect copywriters, and they pay well for the service. And often the closer to the money you get, the more they're willing to pay you. So if you look at a client who, for example, an e-commerce client, and somebody I was just talking to in my mastermind, in fact, who is getting paid quite a nice amount of money to write emails for them. The emails are short and pithy, but she's seen in the results that they're profiting very handsomely from every email that she makes. So imagine if somebody's bringing in $5,000 or $10,000, and I know it's a big gap, but if they're bringing in that kind of money from one email, what's it worth now to pay for that email? Is it worth paying $500 to have that short pithy email written if it makes you $5,000 all day long? People who do launches, if they sell a certain number of their courses, say, for example, you're writing their whole launch funnel. That could include a whole bunch of different things. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of what could be in a launch funnel, but there's a number of assets always. And so say you create one of those and you charge $12,000 for it or $15,000 for it, but they're selling seats at $10,000 or $12,000 each and they're selling 20 of them. That's a really, really worthwhile investment for them, and that's a really good payday for you. And so to me, an ideal client is somebody who understands the value of copy in their business. Now, frankly, and I've talked about this before, sorry if you've heard me as a little bit of a broken record on this, but you can walk down any street in your town, in your city, and you can find people who use copy. They have a website, maybe they wrote it themselves, maybe they hired a copywriter. They've got brochures, they have other collateral material. So it's easy to say to yourself, oh yeah, they could use copy. But if they're not already in the habit of buying copy, what you set yourself up for is educating a whole lot of people for one-off projects. While that can be fine and it can be a good, if you're in a moment where you need to make some money, it's not sustainable because there's not repeat business. I don't need to write for them, all year long, every month, but I do like to know that there's potentially repeat projects. And the reason for that is because, the first project is always the hardest, right? You have to learn all about the company. You have to learn about their value props, what they do, about their audience, about who they're trying to reach. And once you know that, it's way easier to write subsequent copy. In fact, the more copy you write for them, the better the copy gets, and often the better the results get, because you're more familiar, and now you're more familiar with all of the aspects of their business. You also start to get a sense of what works and what people respond to, and so you can craft your copy ever more specifically to adapt to the audience. And again, this goes for other professions as well. To me, an ideal client is somebody who is used to processes and systems. I don't mind if I work inside their system or we work inside my system, and I'm talking about, sort of how we communicate now. But it is very important to me that I can create the processes and I can create the structure. And really what that means is I want to create some of the strategy inside the project. And what you'll find also is clients really value people who are strategists and can see the big picture and can offer ideas, input, and things that they may not be aware of. And that's what really ends up separating you in the end is, whether you're someone who can do strategy and execution or whether you're someone who, who likes to just passively execute what the client orders, which, is fine and it's legitimate. You'll make more money and you'll gain more respect if you bring strategy to the table. And so that's another thing just to think about as you figure out who your ideal clients are. I like people who have a sense of humor. That's not a requisite, but it kind of is. I had one client once who didn't have any sense of humor, and I just felt like with my personality, I was always hitting up against a wall. Like our communication was really stiff and uncomfortable. So that became an important criteria for me. There's a little bit of levity in the project. Everything isn't so, serious and urgent. They have to have a robust budget. I charge nice prices. I don't know what word to use. And I want to work with people who value that, who value my years of experience and expertise. And that's something that they feel willing to pay for. It feels like a good value to them. When you think about who would be ideal for you, I'm suggesting that you change your parameters up a little bit from the dream client, like, oh, I love this company, to what works for me best with a client. The bottom line is, I don't think that you want to have a pool of clients who you have to educate about the value of what you sell, because what that creates is a lot of one-off clients that don't repeat, and a lot of heavy lifting on your part. It's much easier when you're working with the right clients. You don't have all that same struggle. When you're working with ideal clients as opposed to dream clients, things fall into place more naturally. And those type of people tend to know other people like themselves. And so, it sets up a good chain of referrals for you as well. And there's this stupid old cliche, and it's the person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And I think that's kind of true here. It's like, you might convince somebody that they need to improve something or they need some piece of copy, but you've spent a lot of effort there to work with a client you're only going to work with one time. So I hope this distinction makes sense to you. And I want to suggest too that no matter where you are in your business, whether you're brand new, whether you've been around for a while, we have different seasons in business and different criteria at different times. So I think it's certainly on an annual basis, but more frequently if called for, and also when you're feeling sort of unsettled or unhappy with who you're working with, to really think about who would you like to work with? What qualities would they have? What would they bring to the table? And equally, what will you bring to the table? I see so many people who think that clients are the adversary, like they're trying to get as much as they can from you for the least amount of money, and you're trying to get the most amount of money for the least work. And I don't see that as a good value equation. And so for the people who value copy, they're not as concerned about the budget, and they're willing to stretch and expand for the right person and in the right situation. And what you want to do is deliver as much value as you can for a price that feels really good to you and really rewarding to you. I'm a big fan of delivering excellent customer service, making the client feel really valued. But on the other side of that equation, I want to feel really valued as well. That is partly shown inside of the paycheck. So I hope this was helpful. That was a really big reframe for me, the dream client versus the ideal client. And I think as you start thinking about who your ideal client is, again, no matter how long you've been in the business, whether it's 5 minutes, 5 years, 10 years, this is a reasonable change to make, and it's a very helpful way to think about it. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'll just remind you, if you're interested in finding out more about my Magnetic North Mastermind, hit me up at amyposner.com. You can book a time to meet with me or email me at amy@amyposner.com, and I will happily share the case study I have on the beta version, which is just wrapping up pretty shortly here. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. If you want to be notified when these episodes drop, click the bell and you will be notified. If you got any question for me, post it below. I answer all of them. Bye for now.